In this presentation, we will enter cash outflows, including checks and other outflows from the bank statement to QuickBooks. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are in our bank statement. We left off last time. We had entered all the deposits and we entered the checks and highlighted them down to the Sunlight Rentals. We're just going to continue on now with the Visa on 223, right on down and complete the entering of this data into the QuickBooks system. Going into QuickBooks, we have the open windows open. We're in the Home tab. Here are the open windows. You can open the open windows by going to View and Open Windows List. We are now going to open the check register back open, so by going to the banking drop down and the use register. Checking account's the one we want, so we're going to say OK. And there is our checking account. We're just going to continue on entering this data where we left off last time, that being, I'm back to the bank statement, that being at the Verizon check here. So on 223-1029, check to Verizon. That sounds familiar, Verizon being a phone company. So we have seen that before, I believe, so it shouldn't be too difficult. So we're going here on the 29th that we're on, the 29th. Seems like, no, it's not the 29th. Let's go back over here. It's the 23rd. That seems more correct. 23rd that we want. It's check number 1029 is the check. And again, notice they won't be in order all the time because we're not entering them in order. We're not entering all the checks here. This is as they've cleared. And we're going to say it's to Verizon, which we can find with the drop down or the drop up, whatever you want to call it here. We can start typing in Verizon. There it is. Seeing it, vendor. The amount, 410 this time. It's already going to telephone expense. That seems appropriate. And so we can just say tab. And that one's pretty straightforward. So that's how hopefully they will be more and more as we enter this data from month to month as these accounts and these vendors become standardized, things that we've seen before. Then we have Edison Electric. Again, seems like utilities. It's an electric bill. We've seen it before. It should be something that'll just pop up. Even if we don't memorize it, we don't have to know our clients that well. We'll probably start to understand these accounts, but it should be memorized by the system. If I start typing this in, we're at 10:30 and I just start typing in Edison. I mean, we could find it. See, is it in there? Look at all these vendors we have now. It's been very easy to enter this. We just entered them as we've gone. And I could see Edison is up here, or just type in Edison. There it is, tab. And we're going to say Edison is 598, tab. Utilities, sounds appropriate. That's what we had last time. So we're going to say OK. And note, once you get this started and you have the second month you can really pass it on to somebody else at some point too, because the second month should be very easy. Just say, hey, enter all the data for everything that's a repetitive data and tell me which ones are not, and I'll answer questions about the ones that are not, And so this is something that after you do the first month, in other words, might be done by a supervisor or whatnot, and you can give the second month to someone else to do the data input. And then we have the state taxes. Now that's a bit different. We haven't seen that before. So let's go back over here. And that's a kind of a generic name, obviously, but we're going to say 225 and we're going to say 1033 and we're going to say this is state taxes. And we might see something, it might say something more like, California taxes or some kind of state or region tax that we'll have, or some type of tax agency that we would say, that sounds like a state or local tax or something like that. And so we're going to say, okay, state tax, I'm going to add that and vendor. And again, it probably wouldn't be called state tax, some kind of state, this state, whatever state tax. And then we're going to say that the amount here was for 300. Now, I don't know where that one is going at all. I haven't seen this state tax before. So I'm not sure if it's a local tax, is it a personal tax, is it a property tax, is it a sales tax? So we're gonna have to ask about that. So we'll write something in our notes which will say something like, hey, here's on 225, you had a state tax, check number 1033 for 300. What is this? And note that we could just put it in there as state tax and put it in as an expense to state tax and just note them and let them sort that out. But it's useful to note the taxes because we might have internal revenue tax or the state tax could be some type of sales tax, and that might give us some indications that we might want to break out or give some better understanding about the type of clients we have. In other words, if it's a sales tax, that might give us some understanding of whether or not they have sales tax and the merchandise that they're selling, whether it's subject to the sales tax or usage tax. If it's a property tax, we'll get some idea of what the kind of property tax rules are there. If it's an income tax, we'll get some ideas. We don't have to know everything about those taxes, but we might want to just at least group it out and say, hey, this is where we're putting it, so that you have a note of it when you go to your tax professional. We might even just be able to break it out a little bit, make it a little bit easier for the end of the year. So that's what we'll do here. We'll break that out. So right now we're just going to put it into uncategorized expense until we get some idea of what type of tax that is. So we'll say okay. Next item, we're going to highlight that one. So that one has been found. Internal Revenue Service. Again, that's another U.S. tax. So we're paying the Internal Revenue Service. We probably want to ask about that again and say, well, get a little bit more detail on that as well, because we don't know if it's this time period's payment, the prior payment. Is it property tax? Is it employee taxes, payroll taxes, or is it income taxes? So it'd be nice to get more information. We could just write it off, but as expense, just tax expense. But it would be better to get a little bit more information on that. So we'll have a note we'll ask on 226, we got this check number 1034, Internal Revenue Service for this much. We can ask what kind of check, and I'm assuming it's going to be income taxes. We want to note, is it personal income taxes versus business? If it's personal, we might not, put it on the business books. And if it's taxes for employee taxes, payroll taxes, then we might want to categorize that, and that might give us some idea of how we want to deal with payroll. If we're dealing with payroll, then we'll have to figure out how we're going to set up a system to make that as easy as possible as we enter this into the system. So we'll go back over here on the 26th. We're going to say that this is 1034, and we don't have this here yet, so I'm just going to type it in here. Internal Revenue Service. Hope I spelled that right. Internal Revenue Service, tab, and quick add. Vendor. We'll keep it as a vendor. It might be better called other, because we're not really buying anything from them. They just take our money. So we're just going to go here and say it's going to be 1598. And that is going to be uncategorized for now until we figure out where to put it. So we'll say okay. And then I'll go back over here again and see what else we have. We've done this one. So we're going to highlight that. And then we've got this Adam again and Rebecca. So I don't think we knew who those were before, but we'll put those in there again. So these two, it's looking suspiciously like those are payroll now, because notice the dollar, if we look at this from pay period to pay period, we're going to say, the dollar amount's the same. And, it's paid at the end of the month. So it looks like that could be payroll. So that strengthens our assumption. If we look at our notes for the prior month, we asked about these two, so I don't have to really write a note for them again. But we're just going to say, I'm more convinced now that they'll look like a payroll, considering the fact that I've seen them 2 months in a row for the same dollar amount. So we won't act on that assumption, but we're being more confident that that's going to be the result. So that's 1037 is the check, and this is Adam. Adam's already in there, so if we could find him by selecting the drop down or just type in Adam Hamilton, and we're gonna say 3539 uncategorized. It's uncategorized until we verify that it's payroll. Once we do so, we got to figure out what are we going to do with that, because there's a couple different options we can have to make the payroll as easy as possible. We want to have an easy system for ourselves and anybody else. So we'll discuss payroll options. And then the next one, same deal with Erica. So Erica, I'm going to put that one in here, same date. Check number, that's correct. And we're going to type in Erica, and it'll populate for us automatically. 630, uncategorized as well. So then we'll go back over here, and we've got the last two items. I'm going to highlight those and make them yellow. Withdrawals and bank service charges. So we saw those last time, the withdrawals. That means they took money out. I don't know if it's business or personal. So this one we probably want to note each time, because they might have a different withdrawals. It looks the same amount. So we're going to say there's the withdrawals again for the second month. Is it business or personal? And if it's business, do you want us to categorize it in some particular area? Should it go to office supplies, miscellaneous, or something like that? If it's personal, we'll put it into just draws account and equity account. And once we do this for a few times, we'll get a feel of what the customer is going to say. I mean, if the client always says that it's business related, then we're going to pretty much assume at some point that all the draws are going to be business related. If they vary from time to time period, then we might have to ask more often. If they say that it's always personal, then we'll record it as a draw. So we're going to go back and notice the draw terminology here. Withdraw is kind of different than withdraw for what I'm talking about when we put it into the books. Meaning, if we put it in the books as a draw, that means it's an equity account, not part of an expense, not decreasing net income. If we put it in the books as an expense, even though it's called a withdrawal here, this just means money was taken out of the bank. If we record it as an expense, then it's going to lower net income. Okay, so let's go back, and we're going to say that this happened on 2/28. Now, it doesn't have a check number. I'm just going to say other. And again, if all your stuff is electronic transfers or something, you might just put here electronic transfer or something to indicate that it's an electronic payment, or just other, something other than a check number, obviously. And then it's going to be a withdrawal. We don't have a payee because that's going to be the owner that took it out. We could put owner or something like that. And I'm just going to leave it blank and say it's 300. And then it's going to be, we don't know yet. So I'm going to put it into, uncategorized. And we might, if we see draws all the time, we might want to put something up here that just calls draws or withdraws, or put something like that, because that'll trigger the account down here every time. So in other words, if I put the payee to be withdraw, that might be useful, because even though withdraw isn't an actual vendor, if I set it up as a vendor, then next time we have a withdrawal, I can type that in and it'll populate the accounts for us automatically. I usually do put a memo here too that says it's a withdrawal, because that might be something, we need to know what's that 300 there. And so we're going to say, okay, there's the withdrawal back here, found that one. We're going to highlight that and highlight the text. Then the bank service charge. So the bank charges, again, a service fee. So I'm just going to put that at the end of the month, say other again. And then I'm going to type the bank. I'm going to say it's Wells Fargo. Charged us $150. They just took it out of the account. And it didn't give us an information because I think we've used Wells Fargo as a deposit and a withdrawal. So if I look at Wells Fargo, it's in there as an other. So it's not a vendor. So that's why it's not populating the account here. But it's going to be bank service charges. Now we could set up another vendor called Wells Fargo to make it a vendor, have an other and a vendor that would then populate for us if we wanted to choose a system such as that. And then we're going to say record. So now we've entered in all the information from the bank statement to our records, and we need to go back in. This was entered up prior. And now the next step is just to double check this, and the best way to double check it is the reconciliation process. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.